Cricket et al. It's a website. It's a podcast.
Pete, it's a way of life. It's Gideon Haig over here.
Peter Lawler over here.
And welcome to Cricket et al., your independent cricket podcast. It's midwinter in Australia, but somehow cricket omnipotent reigns. We're coming off the back of a T20 series and we're straight into an ODI series. There's always cricket somewhere coming down the pike. Pete, did you watch the game on Saturday night? Actually, I know where we both were on Saturday night, so I know that we didn't watch the game.
Didn't see a second of it until Sunday morning, Gideon,
exactly.
I was in Sam Perry's backyard with you, which I expected Sam Perry's backyard, given the sort of level of his celebrity and things, would have had a big screen for
a giant screen.
Yeah. I thought it would have been much more of a cricket affair than it was.
Although, interestingly, because we're slightly older, I was at home in time to watch the back end of the Australian innings. You might have gone out on the town, I don't know, but I did see the denouement with Maxy.
Oh, you did,
and it was pretty bloody good actually. It was perfectly set up for him. I said on Offsiders yesterday. Part of the fun of watching Maxy these days is he gets into a scenario like that, and it's almost like he's going to do it. It's just a matter of how's he going to do it. He'll find a way, but what's Maxy thinking? Where's he looking? And he's in that case, he's thinking third man's up, that he can reverse ramp over the fielder in the ring. He's probably thinking that Ngedi's going to bowl a lot of slower balls, so he's setting himself for that one in the slot, which indeed he put away. And he's also thinking, well, this is my job. And in fact, the two most interesting shots in that last over were the two shots that he played for no run, not knowing that he had to be on strike to strike the winning boundary because Zampa was at the other end. So it was a great little vintage Maxy scenario, and he's been great. Love that catch the other night. There's just a bit of an aura around everything that Glenn does these days. So it was a really enjoyable game, and climaxed actually what wasn't a bad T20 series. 2-1 probably reflected the two teams, but of course with a little bit of slightly more fortune, it could have been South Africa's series.
There was something infectious about the joy that Glenn took from pulling that off, and I suspect part of that joy is the satisfaction you get out of, as they say in those press conferences, executing a plan. And a plan made up on the run, something he specialises in. It's sort of sad too to think that he doesn't go on to the ODIs anymore. I know. Yeah. They say it at the time, don't they? I'm retiring from the ODIs, and you say, oh yeah, well, goodbye, thank you for everything you do in the ODIs. But it's not until the next series comes around that they're not playing anymore.
Yeah.
It would be nice to see Maxy out in the ODIs, but anyway.
It has, and there have been a few changes in the Australian team, haven't there? There's 5 ins.
Quite a few have come in.
Connolly, Kuhneman and Marnus, who I saw there the other night. And there are the South Africans have been augmented by some of those veterans of the WTC final. Temba Bavuma is back, Mulder and Maharaj. So it's the first those players have seen of Australia since that great match that we were both there for. That's on tomorrow in Cairns, isn't it? And then we've got the got Cairns, and then we got Mackay on Friday and Sunday. What do you think of
the Kazali It's the Cairns Kazali Stadium. I love it too. How did they get a Kazali up there?
It's not the Kazali that you're thinking of. I need to look it up.
I meant to look it up this morning too. We should pause this podcast and look it up. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's the sort of thing that a professional podcast would do, to actually ask these questions and know the answers.
But then we get to the Great
I'll have an
Barrier
answer for
Reef.
you next time.
And then we've got the Great Barrier Reef Arena.
We do.
Which is fantastic names for the stadiums out there. In contemplating the Maxy leaving, we also have Steve Smith not playing ODIs anymore, and Heinrich Klaassen. Yeah. That's right too, isn't it? There's 3 pretty significant names missing from the ODI firmament, Gideon.
And Smith's playing in the 100, isn't he?
He is. Yes, and he played one of those shots.
And
the
David
other
Miller
night.
too from South Africa has preferred to play on the 100 rather than play for his country, which is a gap because he's such a high impact batter.
Is this a trend that David Warner predicted that the ODIs would be the first bit that fall off for players? In Max's case, they've fallen off, haven't they? Because his legs are just getting a bit tired for that format. Yeah,
but it's bilateral short form cricket that's fallen off for some players. I think the global tournaments are still hugely attractive, but what's the context for a series like this? It's content, it's transitory. And if you've played a lot of them before, which both Miller and Smith have done, I guess there's not much of an incentive to add to your record.
If the crowds show up to these next three, as one presumes that they will, it's going to be a very successful sort of little tournament that they played up there. It will, series. Yeah. It's not a tournament, it's a series, Peter.
Yeah, and Australia's been, I think, slow to embrace this. We've been playing cricket up the top end since 2003. But we've never made it a habit, have we? We've never taken advantage of the good year-round conditions.
No, I spoke to Gavin Dovey a couple of days ago and said, I was keen to sort of get a piece up about cricket at the top end, but I feel like I might have missed the boat. I must ring him back. Gav, if you're listening, I will call back. Yes, I listened to Mitch Marsh's captain's interview ahead of the ODIs. It was completely unenlightening. I got nothing out of it.
Well, I mean, look, he's building since the failure in the T20 World Cup, he's built a striking record as a short form captain, hasn't he? And he's redefined his role because he's not bowling, he's batting at the top, and I think he's finally kind of placing his stamp on that team. And it's a team that, as we noted last time, in T20 terms, looks more and more like a T20 domestic team, that batting deep with high impact hitters, so they can go hard from the very top.
Yes,
it's got outstanding fielders. It's got youth and athleticism, but also experience and everyone knowing their defined roles. So as you work your way towards the next T20 World Cup, Australia's actually in a pretty good place.
Yes, well, that was one phrase I noted from Mitch's press conference, because there's one phrase I've been hearing quite a bit around these white ball series: role clarity. Everybody has role clarity. Something you might, which is important, I guess, in those short formats. Can be important in the test format too, with the lack of role clarity at the top of the Australian order. But they know what they're doing. It'll be interesting to see their approach in ODIs. I don't think that Marsh has ever batted first while captain. He certainly hasn't done it for a long time. They love the chase, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, obviously a lot of teams do. England loves the chase in any context these days. I think there's a sense that no target is beyond anyone's reach, and that if you want to play with having kicked the jams out, it's chasing that gives you the stimulus.
Yeah. Have you been watching any of the 100, Gideon?
Look,
to talk about the other.
It's funny. I was chatting about this to Tom Morris on Saturday night.
I was part of the conversation. I almost reported on it this morning.
And we were all saying, weren't we, that despite being sort of cricket badgers, we find it really difficult to watch the 100. I still don't think, as I said on Saturday night, that I've been able to watch an entire game. I get distracted. A, because it's trivial. B, because I think it's junk. But C, because it's so bloody confusing. I mean, cricket is confusing enough at the best of times, but they've added a layer of confusion to the 100. And look, the other thing that I don't like about it, Pete, is, I like traditional cricket feats. I like centuries, and there have been 3 centuries scored in the history of the 100. There have only been 21 50s in this tournament, and 3 forfers. Now, I like my feats to have a certain scale. There have been, I think, 300 so far like I said, in the history of the tournament. None this year. And that to me feels like just it's like getting entree after entree after entree. It's like going to a Chinese restaurant and just getting lots of small dishes, which I always find sort of inherently unsatisfying.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and the T20 format was confected enough.
Yeah,
then to sort of twist yourself in knots and, as you say, abbreviate it even further.
But the T20 tournament, the T20 format works. It is long enough to get 100. I think I was saying last week, that additional 20 balls, you wouldn't think it would matter all that much, but somehow it does.
There's something there, isn't there?
It creates a kind of a critical mass. That seems to be the minimum amount of credible cricket that you can have. And certainly if you reduce it any further to T10 level, I think it just becomes absurd.
Perhaps they'll become accustomed to it.
But I think the likelier thing is that the 100 will simply revert to being a T20 tournament. I mean, apart from the brand name, it's really doesn't. There's no overpowering logic to continue it at that level. And to me, that's just it's so much more accessible. And if accessibility is a priority in short form cricket, which is the whole thing about the 100 was that it was meant to be digestible and a commodity product, then just remove the additional bells and whistles and all the complexities. Just make it deadly simple. 120 balls, maximum 4 overs, basically a maximum of 60 balls for a batter. And that's actually not bad. I looked at the duration of the 300s that they've been so far, and I think they're between 45 and 49 balls. And it's very good going, but, I wouldn't have thought there have been too many T20 in less time than that. So, I don't know. If you want to get me watching the 100, change it to the 120.
You promise you'll watch?
I promise I'll watch, yeah.
Okay. I looked up the women's 100 just to see because I noted that the Australian women's A team has been playing a series against India A.
Yeah.
And Alyssa Healy's over there. And actually doing very well. She made 137 not in the last game at the ODI and 91 previous. And I wondered why she wasn't at 100 and who was there. Lanning's got 200 runs and Harris has got 199 runs. Parochial to a fault, aren't I? They're the top run scorers. A woman called Chatley is the third highest run scorer. I'd never heard of her. But she'd played in the 100 before, I think. And Capsy, of course, who we all know. There are no Indian women playing this year, Gideon. That struck me as curious.
Well, of course, they're India A. It's playing against Australia A at the moment. And some of their leading players are playing against Aussie A at the moment.
Yeah. There is that too. So that's about all the interest I could take in the 100. Apologies to the reader who was berating me for my lack of interest in one-day cricket.
I think we might take a break, Pete, and we might come back and talk about cricket's big loss on Friday night. The loss of Bob Simpson, a very considerable Australian cricket figure who we both had a little bit to do with, but I guess for a new generation, he requires a degree of reintroduction, but a hugely significant Australian. Back in a moment on Cricket et al. Peter, it's the question on everybody's lips, isn't it? You just bump into total strangers in the street, at Sam Perry's party, in all walks of life. They come up to you and they say, Pete, Gideon, what is Saley?
And I say, my name's not Gideon. Sorry. Happened again the other night. Well, I'm glad you asked, Gideon, because Saley is an eSIM that's life-changing once you get onto it. Saley's changed my life. It's changed your life. It's changed the life of people who travel overseas with their telephones.
Indeed. And we can only thank the good officers of Nord Security who have made available affordable eSIM plans in over 150 countries. And Pete, as you and I know, if you've ever been lost abroad and badly needed an internet connection and your cat's walked in front of you, with no Wi-Fi spot in sight, you'll understand what a difference a local SIM card can make.
It's fantastic. You land at the airport, you pick up your bags, you sail through immigration, if it's not America, and you don't have to stop at any of those little booths selling you high-priced local plans. You avoid the scammers. You minimize your roaming fees. As you say, get in. You are connected 24/7. And if you're not connected 24/7, give Saley a call. I've done that. You've done that. They're very good at helping you out. Not that you should need any help, because it's very, very simple once you understand it. You turn it on and it works.
It's totally belt and braces, the 24/7 support. You won't need it, but just in case you do, there's also a full refund if your device isn't eSIM compatible, but that almost never happens. Never happens. Not in my experience anyway.
No, it doesn't. So get yourself an eSIM if you're getting on a plane, and your life's going to be better.
It is. If you install the eSIM, you'll need to download the Saley app first. You activate the plan. Bob's your uncle. Did you have an Uncle Bob, Pete? Do you know about Saley?
No, I didn't have an Uncle Bob. Oh, well, not that I've discovered one yet, but I'm still discovering uncles. My father had a lot of siblings.
But we're like your uncle at Cricket et al. On Saley, because if you go to saley.com/cricket et al. and you use the code Cricket et al., you'll get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase. And tell them that Uncle Gid and Pete sent you. And we're back on Cricket et al. The news came through actually on Saturday morning. I got a phone call saying, I suppose you've heard that Bob Simpson has passed. I said, no, I didn't. I hadn't heard it, but thank you very much for telling me. I better sit down and write something about him. And it's a challenge to write something about Simpson, because he's sui generis, isn't he? I don't think there's any figure in Australian cricket quite like him, to have had so many roles and filled them so substantially over such a long period of time. You know, cricket's very instant these days. But Simo was round through multiple eras. There were 3 acts in his career. There was his period as a player. He played 23 test matches. Then he became Australian captain, and he captained Australia 29 times. And then he retired in 1968 with a substantial test record, averaging 46. Respected and admired for his proficiency as a opening batter, leg spinner and slip fielder. Then in 1977, he comes back at the age of 41 to captain the Australian team that's been denuded of talent by the depredations of Kerry Packer. And
so it was a full 10 years later. 10 years later,
yeah.
But he kept playing cricket in that period, hadn't he?
He kept playing for Western Suburbs. Apparently in that period, which is kind of his lion in winter period, in order to keep stimulated, he would set himself challenges. Like, apparently one day he made 100 for Western Suburbs with 89 in singles, just to demonstrate the importance of the single. There was another day when apparently he only hit the ball on the leg side and made 100. It was too easy for him, so he had to sort of set himself hurdles to jump over. So he came back. He played.
It was a lunch with Bradman that convinced him to. That's right. Convinced him to return, wasn't it? Hard man to say no to, Bradman.
In the Angus Steakhouse. I love that detail.
Yeah. And I thought I was interested in the argument that Bradman used to convince Simpson to come back, and said, "Well, I had to come back from my country after the Second World War because my country needed me. So it's your time to step up, son, and do it again."
Similar time gap, and similar interregnum.
Yeah, well, the cricket wars was on.
That's right. Yep. So Simo did come back, and I can remember that series very vividly, the 77-8 series. There was a lot of spin bowled, and of course Simo was a beautiful player of spin. He was a magnificent user of his feet. And in fact, you didn't see a lot of batsmen use their feet in the mid-1970s. So Simo kind of rolled rolled the game back to a period where players did dance down the track and bowlers bowled quite slowly.
Well, I think it was that first tour against India?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he made 176 in Perth and he made 100 in the last test in Adelaide.
You were going to get opportunity to use your feet against India.
He was, yeah. Then they went to the West Indies and it was much tougher going over there because in the first 2 test matches it was the full-scale West Indies side with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and they ran over Australia and Simo was made to feel his years. I think he wanted to continue as Australian captain in 78-9 against the England team. But the selectors by then were a bit concerned about the England attack was, of course, a lot quicker than India's. So Australia settled on Graham Yallop, and the rest is history. And then Simo went back to the media. He went back to coaching. He took a role at New South Wales. He was very successful. And then in the mid 1980s, Alan Border takes over as Australian captain. There's that period where the ranks are being raked by the agents of South Africa. Cricket's not languishing in public affection, but it's in a somewhat confused state. There's ambivalence about the relationship between the Australian Cricket Board and Channel 9. And Simo kind of returns to the colours as kind of a restorer of traditional values. He wants players to be reminded of the importance of basics, running between the wickets, fielding, catching. And he sets out to work the Australian team a lot harder than it had ever been worked before. The strange thing about it is that, we now think that he was immediately sort of beamed down from cricket heaven as coach, but in fact they didn't call him coach. They called him assistant manager.
Was that the phrasing they used?
Australia had such a taboo on the idea of there being a national coach that it didn't want to acknowledge the significance of Simo's role. Simo saw himself as a coach straight away.
Yeah.
But we had always believed that, cricket's bred in the bone. You don't stifle natural talent. You leave it up to the players. It's a player-directed game. The captain is responsible. The responsibility is not shared.
Yeah, and these were issues that Simpson himself was aware of when he took over the job. But, but before we skipped quickly past his playing career, and I mean the thing that's most immediate to my mind, because it's the only thing that I remember of Simpson's career, is the comeback.
Yes.
That's an incredible thing, isn't it? To face the West Indies in the 42nd year of life.
Yes.
Pre-helmets, I'm assuming. They weren't wearing helmets then, were they?
Yeah.
I mean, we celebrate Colin Cowdrey coming back at the same age, actually.
Good point. Yeah.
To play against Australia, against Tomo and Lilly. But what Simpson did there was something else. And I think if you talk to anyone who's 40 years old and say, how would you fancy 10 years on the pine, then you come back and you face the West Indies attack?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's an extraordinary cricketer. And you forgot to mention his slips catching.
Oh, yeah.
It was something of absolute beauty, wasn't it? If you go back and watch the highlights of Bob Simpson taking a catch in slips.
He had this very particular technique.
Yes.
Which was that he would let the ball hit him on the chest. If the ball came through at that height, he didn't try to put his hands up there. He'd let it hit the chest and then hold on to it.
Have you ever seen that?
He was amazingly effective at doing this.
I remember my mate Paul Brazier doing it in an under-16s game, but I dropped him back a little bit for a catch mid-off. And so determined was he to take this catch and probably didn't trust his hands. He clutched, he took a chest mark.
He channeled Simo.
Channeled Simo. How bruised would you get?
Yeah.
Fielding like, even against the spinners, wouldn't you?
Oh, he's a hard man, Simo. That's the other thing that everyone said. Hard man.
But
hard man to love. Probably an easier man to admire, but didn't inspire great affection, reverence and respect,
no.
but perhaps not affection.
But who was it who said about slips catching that you let the ball catch you? You don't catch the ball. And then the finest of slips catchers do, don't they? Their hands, the ball finds its way into their hands rather than their hands find their way toward the ball. Simo very much embodied that.
And
perhaps the only better slips catch was subsequent the captain who got rid of him as coach. Tubby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's all right. It's all right, Simo. I can catch at slips. You can bugger off now. I don't need you. Do his coaching. And I reckon the coaching is interesting because that's perhaps his greatest contribution to cricket, unless that just reflects my age.
It's not just the coaching; it's the fact that he created the role. He invented the role of national coach. It had never existed before, and its specifications were unclear. Should the coach also be a selector? Well, Simo thought so, but others didn't necessarily agree. Should Simo have a role in inventing a coaching philosophy for the entire game? Simo certainly thought so. Not everyone agreed. Of course, Ian Chappell disagreed with the whole idea of there being a national coach. But the players in his era made surprising accommodations for something that was so against the traditions of the game or even what they've been used to in the Australian setup. They very quickly assimilated the idea that Simo was there to coach. And that must have had something to do with A, Simo's personality, and B, Alan Border's personality as captain. I'm not sure that the coaching arrangement would have worked quite so well with a different captain at a different stage of his career.
I think you're missing a third important element there too. You need the right team to accept the coach and the coach's manner. So, Simo was a particular type. Well, he was the first coach to many degrees, but that was a team who in recent period had brought in Warburton, Jones, McDermott, Jeff Marsh. Yes. So you had a team of a team that was wet behind its ears. It didn't have a lot of test experience. No. It had a captain who had enough to do. AB had enough to do without worrying about all that kind of shit. And it was interesting. I think in 86, about 6 months into the job, Simo wrote a piece for the board. You may have read it when you were doing the board papers. I don't know if you ever came across it.
Yep. Yeah. And it's reprinted actually in his book, The Reasons Why.
Yes, and it's also reprinted in Cricket Then and Now, which is sitting on my desk at the moment because I was reading it before when you rang and said, "What are you doing? We're supposed to be podcasting."
I think Simo's belief, wasn't it, was that the World Series cricket had kind of disrupted the intergenerational relations in the Australian team.
Exactly.
Previously, the coaches had coached one another. But the players had become more, I don't know, egocentric or self-involved, and they weren't necessarily looking after each other, and it needed someone to introduce a note of cohesion. I think the other thing about Simo coming into the Australian setup is a lot of the players were from New South Wales and had prior experience of him as a state coach. He was a known quantity. When he was chosen as coach, everyone knew what they were getting.
Yeah,
and they wanted what they were getting, in fact. Of course, the other person who'd been considered for the role of Australian coach was Clive Lloyd. You remember that strange phase where Bob Hawke was obsessed with the idea of getting Clive Lloyd and maybe introducing Clive Lloyd at this mooted academy in Adelaide. It's absolutely bizarre brainstorm from Hawke. But that kind of opened up a vacancy or the possibility of discussion of a role like that.
Yeah, because he said he was obviously he was a sponge. He was one of those guys who learned from everybody and sort of loved that any chance he got to talk to Bradman. You could see that they'd probably get along really well, those two, cut from a similar cloth, I think. Yeah. But I think it was Neil Harvey, wasn't it, that he credited with having the most influence on him as one of the senior players in that dressing room. And he said the way, and he probably only knew this from his experiences at New South Wales and at Australia, but the way it worked was, the captain had a lot to do, but the captain ran training, and even without it being a formal process, the senior players adopted the junior players and took them under their arms and guided them in the ways of the games. In fact, later on, he suggested that was one of the reasons that West Indies cricket went into decline, because he thought, and it's an argument that I've actually heard from Brian Lara say too, that the senior players didn't really bother giving back to the junior players in some ways. He also blamed the junior players for expecting the same level of success as the players who'd come before them without actually putting in the same work. But he gave it a lot of thought, didn't he? And I guess I go back to that player analogy because it pops up again, I think, when you watch the curve of Justin Langer's coaching career, and it's a point I've made before. I think that they followed a similar curve. Simo was the right man in the right place for that team when he started, but not when he finished. It was time for him to finish.
Well, he'd made himself redundant, hadn't he? Which I guess, I think early on that's what Simo promised to do. He said that, by the time I'm finished, things will be second nature that I won't be necessary. Yeah. And he did it. He's lasted 10 years almost in that job. Now that's pretty extraordinary to last that long. And he, in some respects, he could say that mission accomplished, because the last series that he was the coach in, that's when Australia beats the West Indies in 1995.
Yeah.
Actually, did you hear that interview with Booney?
No.
Which I thought was quite touching. You remember the tour where Simo got blood clots in his legs in the West Indies in 95, and it was missing from the team as it proceeded on its triumphal path. And towards the end, Simo rang Boone and said, I'm worried that the boys have lost faith in me. And Booney, recalling this conversation, he became quite choked up. Yeah. And he was trying to reassure Simpson that no, the boys still wanted you back. Boys still valued your contribution. Yeah. In fact, probably by that stage, as you say, they had moved on a little bit past him. But it was a side of Simo that you never really saw. That Simo feeling vulnerable about his role, because otherwise he just exuded adamantine confidence in his abilities and his philosophies.
You sat down and interviewed him at one point in his career.
I interviewed him a couple of times, actually. Yeah.
One time in particular where you were taken into the inner sanctum.
I interviewed him for Inside Sport back in 94, and those were the days when things were very, very informal, and it was during a final, one of the finals in that ODI series, where Australia was pitted against Australia A, and a summer of infamy, if you ever asked Tubby Taylor about it. But I went in to chat to him. There must have been a shared area between the Australian and the Australia A dressing rooms, because at one point when I was chatting to him, Haydos came in. He just got out, and Simo said to him, how's it playing out there? Haydos said, it's a bit up and down, the ball's not coming on. And then at that very moment, Damien Martin hit this huge six down the ground, and Simo looked at Haydos and said, doesn't seem to be troubling him very much. Haydos was just
back in the corner, Haydos,
and just slunk out of the room. And Simo turns to me and says, so would you like a cup of coffee?
Instant, of course.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah,
that'd be right. That would have been nice. I spoke to him on the phone a few times. I'd run into him at functions, but he was sort of done and dusted by the time I got my feet on the ground.
He was tough. But he was also incredibly interesting on cricket. I can remember a conversation with him during a Sydney Test match. I was in the hotel and I bumped into him, and I was asking him why particular bowlers bowled well in tandem, why a slow bowler like Warne would bowl well with a seam bowler at the other end, rather than, I was thinking about the idea of bowling partnerships. We always talked about spinners bowling well together, but why would pace bowlers bowl well with spin bowlers because, Craig McDermott was bowling brilliantly that summer and Warney as well. And he had lots of interesting things to say about that. There was nothing that Simo really hadn't thought about a lot where cricket was concerned. You never got the feeling that you were asking him a question for the first time. He had already considered it.
He'd love to hear you say that, because I think he said the same thing about his conversations with Bradman. Bradman always had an interesting take on anything to do with cricket, from the length of the grass, to the sort of wood the stumps were made of. He had a theory, and he knew a little bit about it too.
Yeah. Hey, actually quite a nice tribute paid today. I don't know whether you saw it, but John Howard sent out a release about Simo, and Simo said that John Howard said that he saw Simo's debut for New South Wales against Victoria in 1953. And Simo was 16 when he made his debut, and John Howard would have been 13. So they're almost exact contemporaries.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. Let's get John on the phone, will you? Let's ask him about that. Mr. Howard, I'm sorry. Mr.
Our favourite cricketing Prime Minister. I thought that was really lovely. I mean, amazing that a guy makes his debut at the age of 16 for his state. We assume that the cricketers of yore were so much older because they look so much older in photographs, but he was just a boy from Merrickville, Pete, from Illawarra Road, as you were telling me at the weekend.
I think it was 517. I'd have to go back and check again. I've often said to the mayor, we need a little blue plaque on that house. Bob Simpson was born here.
Yes.
And down the road, down at the end of the street here, he got his first black eye playing cricket, I think, attempting the pull shot.
Well, I've done
was
Harvey
that
Lane.
the source of his falling out with Ian Chappell, the hook shot? I think it was.
Yeah.
Do you remember when he told Chappell to put the hook shot away? Chappell was furious about
I think a lot of people told Chappelli to put the hook shot away, and every time they did, they redoubled his enthusiasm for the stroke.
Yeah. You got to be a bit smarter than that if you want Chappelli to do something. You probably have to insist that he does it. Would be the only way to get him not to do it.
They didn't get on, did they, Chappelli? And
they never
Simo,
would they?
Might be mildly understating it. What's the origin of that antagonism, do you think?
Rugged individualism, do you think? The nature of the teams, the nature of the two people. Don't tell me what to do. Ian Chappell was very much of that school of that you talked about within Australian cricket dressing rooms, where they generated themselves, they worked it out themselves. And interestingly enough, after he said that Simo buggered up his game by telling him to stop hooking, it was him and his brother Greg practicing on the cement in the winter, I think, that got his game back together. That's how players worked in those days. It was a very similar, I thought, antagonistic relationship to the one that Shane Warne had with John Buchanan.
Yeah. Yep.
Good point, you can't tell me what to do.
Interesting parallels. Yeah. Of course, I mean, one sort of one casus belli is the fact that they were on opposite sides of the barricades in 1977 during World Series cricket.
And there's no doubt that contributed to it.
Yeah. They were both captain of their country, or as they perceived it, and symbols of competing attractions.
I was heartened by the recognition of Simpson's career in his passing.
Yeah,
I thought,
me too.
Yeah, that's a significant cricket character who's probably got the recognition that he deserves in death.
Yes.
Because he's been absent for some time, and we can forget these characters and what they contribute.
Yeah.
I tell you what, that call about Simo dying, because I got one, I think Simo's dead, have you heard? I said, no, but I've been getting calls for 4 years along similar lines to get ready, write the obit. I hear Simo's not very well. So I think he'd been out of action for quite some years now.
It's interesting, isn't it? I was thinking the other day, so he finishes as Australian coach in 95 and is succeeded by, I think it was Jeff Marsh, wasn't it? And he never gets another coaching job. And at that point, he's not 60. Yeah. I think he goes and coaches Leicestershire for a period. He's done some coaching in Scotland and Nepal. But here's a guy who captained Australia and coached Australia to the top of the world, but never really went anywhere else. And I guess that's because there wasn't really the global market for coaches.
No, the career coach was yet to be invented, wasn't it? To a degree that we see now.
Yeah. They weren't that portable, but they are now. And the profession of coach owes a lot to Simpson in terms of the fact that he demonstrated that you could take a pre-existing group of players, add a coach, and get substantially better performances as a result. People always wondered at what point, or at what margin, a coach would affect the performance of a team. And in that decade, Simpson demonstrates or makes a strong case for the coach being a significant contributor to a team's welfare and improvement.
A certain type of coach too, because I think when he wrote in that piece that he wrote in '86, that we got all sort of input around cricket was on fitness and that side of things, and he said, and what is significantly lacking, and perhaps to a degree went on for some time afterwards, was skills coaching, being able to look at a player and say, I know what you're doing wrong. You need to do this, or you need to do that, without putting them through, without creating a sort of cookie cutter cricketer, which academies do. I think Simpson was probably a little bit of a good player whisperer on that level.
Well, tell us that Simon Katich story, Pete.
Well, that leads to Simon Katich too, doesn't it? Unfortunately,
everything leads to Simon Katich.
Everything leads back to Simon Katich, because as we were saying on Saturday night at Sam's 40th birthday, when Kat got cut from the Australian team the first time, this is my memory of it, and I have yet to check it with Simon because he rang back, but the party was in full swing, so I couldn't speak to him. Simpson made contact through a third party, and he said, if Simon needs help, I can see what he needs to do. If he wants to make contact with me, I'll work with him. And they did work together. I don't know how long. I don't know how many times. When I talk to Simon during the week, I'll come back to you next Monday with the news. But it worked a treat too. Might have helped that Simon was in New South Wales by that period too, so Bob was willing to help him. It went on for that fantastic summer that Simon had, perhaps the most successful summer by any batter, wasn't it? And then entry back into the Australian team. But Bob could see, watching from the TV, that Simon had a slight flaw that had entered his game and could be fixed.
And he would have loved nothing more than sharing that knowledge, because he was very generous with his knowledge.
And when Simon actually lost his contract the next time, Simpson attended that famous press conference at the SCG.
He did right. Yeah.
He sat front and centre.
Did he? Right.
As Simon sprayed Andrew Hilditch for dropping, rightly so, for tearing up his contract. But guess who Andrew Hilditch was?
Exactly, his son-in-law.
Bob Simpson's son-in-law. Oh. So it was a very curious circumstance that morning at that press conference. I wonder if there's footage of that press conference anywhere. I remember I hadn't been covering cricket all that long at that period, saying to the guys who'd been around longer than me, was that press conference as good as I thought it was?
Is it always like this?
I think Jim Maxwell and Malcolm Combo said, best press conference ever seen in our entire cricket career. He had a lectern there. It was kind of like he turned it into a machine gun turret.
Right.
He just started spraying bullets. Yeah.
Right.
We should dig that up. I'll get a transcript of it for the Cricket NL readers.
Well, anyway, Bob Simpson, remarkable figure. When it comes to thinking about influences on cricket, as distinct from maybe cricketers per se, I think he's up there with Bradman and Benno in terms of his influence across cricket, across the generations, across nations. As a kind of a personification of Australian cricket, and those kind of world historical figures don't come along very often. You can contribute in one way or another way or another way. But Simo did it across all areas of the game. No part of the game did he not touch.
Legal aspect too.
Indeed.
As you mentioned in your piece.
The only Australian captain to get sued for defamation. 1966, Australia was on tour in South Africa. Simo was captain, and he had written his autobiography, Captain's Story. There's a chapter 3 of that. Is a very pungent chapter called The Chuckers, about bowlers with illegal actions. And in it, he cites some names of players who had been so proscribed. And he then goes on to make the assertion that I say that the chucker knows he chucks, and that you should have no pity for him if he should happen to be no ball. That he is a knowing cheat, which I don't know how the defo lawyers didn't pick that up. But Stanley Paul had to withdraw the book from sale, and when the book was reissued in paperback, that chapter's gone. The writ, I think, was actually served on Simpson in South Africa.
It was from Mecca, wasn't it?
It was from Mecca, yes. Sorry, I should have specified that. Yeah, yep. So I actually, funny enough, many years later, when I was editing Wisden Australia, I asked Simo to write a piece about chucking.
Yeah.
Because it was around the period of Murali and some other bowlers who seemed to be pushing the boundaries of the law. And I asked him to write a chapter on what advantage actually is it for a bowler to bowl with a bent arm. We understand that it's a transgression, but why is it such a significant transgression? It's not a bad piece, actually. Look it up. I think it's in the 99 Wisden Australia, but probably no one else would have written it. And it's pretty straightforward. It's a question that we don't often ask. We accept that cricket is a straight arm game, but why does it have to be a straight arm game?
Well, the scientists tell us that it never was a straight arm game. There was always a degree of flex, weren't they?
Yeah.
I grew up always understanding that it was an evil associated with fast bowling, but it seems to give more advantage to slow bowlers than fast bowlers.
Yeah.
We called my sister Ian Meckiff.
Did you?
Because every family holiday, she'd throw up in the back of the car. She was a chucker.
Oh, what an erudite cricket joke, Pete.
That was, yeah. She never got it.
I reckon that's probably all we've got time for on Cricket Etal today, Pete. And on that
probably
note,
a good note to pull it up on.
Yeah. Till next time, it's goodbye from me.
Good night from him.